I'm recording this video on May 18th, which is the Agender Pride Day. Happy Agender Pride Day, everyone, including me. If you want to read a published article I wrote about being a gender last year, the link is going to be in the description in the Google Doc next to the rest of the sources I'm going to use for this video. Also, I put on pink nail polish in honor of nimona, which I hadn't done since I was like 6. So you all better be proud of me for overcoming my dysphoria. So what is Nimona? Nimona is a beautiful and chaotic, very chaotic animated movie on Netflix, which deeply connected to me as someone who's trans, queer, and from Iran. Yes, I am from Iran. Hello. This story has it all. A punk and gender fluid character, which the creator Andy Stevenson called monk punk because it's in the middle of medieval but futuristic world, which amazing. Gay people, a city called Gloradome, and a character whose last name is, and I you not, Golden Loin. As I said, it takes place in this weird dystopia that's a mixture of medieval and futuristic at the same time. So like there are flying cars, but there are also knights and an absolute monarchy for some reason. It also has anti-authority themes, which we approve of in this household, always. Nimona the movie is based on a webcomic of the same name by our beloved Andy Stevenson, who was the showrunner of She-Ra and the Princesses of Power. Andy is bigender and transmasculine and uses he/him pronouns. He first published the webcomic on Tumblr, of all places, in 2012 when he was around 19. Yes, he was on Tumblr and I love him for it. Honestly, if you're on Tumblr, I just automatically think you're kind of cool. This post from September 17th, 2011 was the first mention of Nimona that I could find on his Tumblr. I'm going to walk you through the movie beat by beat and talk about my viewpoint as a queer and transgender person who grew up in a country very similar to what we see in the movie. Obviously, there are going to be spoilers ahead for both the movie and the comic because I am going to discuss the comic and its ending in particular. If you haven't watched it, I'm begging you to pause this video and go watch it. The experience is more magical than anything I could describe to you in this video. I truly do not want to spoil it for you, but after you watch it, please come back and watch this video too, because I worked really hard on it. Thank you. Also, if you have any of these triggers that are on the screen right now, please be cautious. We are going to talk about them. Please subscribe and consider supporting me on Ko-Fi or Patreon if you want to, but no pressure. And now, let's do this. The movie starts with narration of a story that I would have to assume every child in Gloradome grew up hearing. Long ago, a big bad monster unexpectedly attacked the kingdom and set everything ablaze until the hero called Glorith, yes, that is her name, I love the names in this movie, told it to go back into the shadows where it came from.
Go back to the shadows from whence you came!
Glorith also decided to build a wall around the city or the kingdom, however you want to put it, and train a bunch of knights to protect it. She declared that they can never put their guards down because that's when the monsters are going to attack. And therefore, the descendants of each knight that she trained should also become knights to protect the realm. So on and so forth forever and ever and ever.
So she trained an elite force of knights and decreed that their descendants would protect the kingdom for generations to come.
Fuck you, the child of this guy. You gotta be a knight, no matter what your dreams are. Who cares about free will? Not Glorith. You're just our war machine. We then fast forward 1,000 years into the future to these futuristic buildings and all the screens on each and every one of them that are my nightmare because they give me headaches. Flying cars, which are actually really cool, not gonna lie about that one. All of this. And they still have knighting ceremonies and they still call themselves lords and ladies, because of course they do. And the most insane thing to me is that they have an absolute monarchy, which is when a monarchy is in control of the government and the laws put in place. So for example, the UK monarchy isn't an absolute monarchy, but Vatican or United Arab Emirates, I think that's how you say it, those are absolute monarchies. And it just boggles my mind that they still have that. Why? This juxtaposition of futuristic and medieval is one of my favorite things about the movie, and it's even embedded in the animation style by the directors intentionally. These are the directors, Troy Quane and Nick Bruno, aka my dad. Sorry, no take backsies, you are my parents now. And they have talked in depth about the style of 2D animation done in a CG setting, something they called 2.5D or 2.5D. This is them trying to represent a medieval future world. They use traditional 2D animation techniques in new systems, both to stay true to the comic book roots and to represent this crazy mishmash in the world. You have dragon slaying VR games readily available, but also like only two genders.
Aidan Sugano, our production designer, and Jeff Turley, who's production designer, did a great job of staying true to that graphic 2D nostalgic look and helping it seat in this really crazy medieval future kingdom.
This one detail tells us so much. It tells us how they've superficially progressed, but they're still stuck in their old days of thinking. Who knows, maybe they had to like sell the other genders to afford the flying cars.
I mean, the medieval future is a place that's moved forward in time, even though the thinking's in the past. So this 2.5D representation of that was kind of this nice nod to, we're making the movie in CG, but with a nostalgic sort of, wink to the 2D sort of days of yore, which also goes back to the idea of the graphic novel roots.
This is Ballister Bolthart, played by Riz Ahmed, a British actor of Palestinian background. Ballister here is brooding.
Will Ballister be broody on the biggest day of his life?
I'm not brooding. I'm thinking. This is my thinking phase.
I'm sorry, thinking. He's thinking about how he's a commoner who was chosen specifically by the queen to become a knight. A move that goes against the whole thing that Glorith had said about how knights can only be descendants of other knights. Again, fuck that one guy's child.
Oh, he doesn't come from a noble bloodline. But he might just have the heart of a hero.
Ballister is worried that people won't accept him as a true knight, and he's kind of justified because of how many people are against it.
Ballister joining the ranks for the first time in history. Our safety will be put in the hands of a commoner.
I don't feel safe. It's not what Glorith wanted.
I really hope the Queen knows what she's doing.
Why are these people so classist? What the hell? What is going on? We are also introduced to Ambrosius Goldenloin, who has one of the best last names ever and is modeled and voice acted by one of the coolest YouTubers ever, Eugene Lee Yang. In the arms of the angel. I remember watching Eugene's coming out video when I was like 16 and feeling so represented as an Asian person from an Asian family. So seeing him here is such a delight. I also want to mention how much I appreciate that they kept Riz and Eugene's authentic noses as a part of their character's model. As someone who doesn't have the white beauty standard nose, as you can clearly see, it's nice to see myself in other characters on the screen, and I genuinely appreciate it so much. Anyway, so Big Energy here is a direct descendant of Glorith herself, and your typical douchebag who's full of himself.
Ambrosius Goldenloin, direct descendant of Glorith herself, and the most anticipated knight of a generation. Woo!
Or is he?
Hey, thinky face, look at me. You were better and worked harder than all of us.
You're gonna be a knight, Bal.
Okay.
It's like, they're gay. Goldie is just trying to calm down his boyfriend, and they be gay and married. Good for them.
What if they still hate me? No one hates a hero of the realm. They're gonna love you. Like I do.
They get ready for the knighting ceremony and you can see that this government isn't even subtle about their classism. Bro was given a charcoal armor because he's a peasant, and Goldie was given a golden armor because he's the bestest boy ever. Why are they so classist? What is happening? This one guy, with may I say, a fantastic hairstyle, gives Ballister his sword and wants to show him something on his phone when Todd interrupts him. Fucking Todd. We hate Todd. Ignoring the fact that these bitches have flying cars and they chose to ride a horse into the ceremony. Look at him. This man admires his boyfriend so much. He's so smitten. The Queen knights Ballister, who by the way was on top of his class, unlike in the bedroom. His last name is Golden Lord. You can't tell me he doesn't talk.
Sir Ballister Boldheart, hero of the realm.
This is such an important moment because even though the people in the audience are commoners themselves, they're still hesitant to cheer for someone of their own background achieving something so important. Like, the brainwashing has gone so deep that these people don't think their own people deserve anything unless a higher up tells them to. The higher up being the Queen. The Queen also lets everyone know that they have solved classism and now everyone can be a knight if they want.
Starting today, any of you should be able to hold the sword if you want it. If you earn it.
It only took them like 1,000 years, but better late than never, I guess. Anyway, then shit hits the fan.
Let a new era of heroes begin with you.
Good in bed, chops off his boyfriend's arm as a reflex of everything he was taught, and he regrets it immediately. Can you imagine the arguments? I do not want to be in his position. I don't want to go to Chili's. Well, you chopped off my arm, so we're going to Chili's. As the kingdom's guards are running around trying to capture Ballister, he runs away to like an evil lair in the middle of the woods and makes himself a robotic arm, like the dork that he is. I need to emphasize just how much of a nerd this man truly is in the comics. He's like a whole mad scientist, and there's this part where they go to a science fair and he looks like a kid in the candy store. It's amazing and I love it so much. Then our Chaos Goblin shows up.
Hey, boss. I love the secret lair. The garbage and the smell of sadness really pull the whole thing together.
Wait. Who are you?
The name's Nimona.
And how did you...
Whoa, yeah! Sick arm! Did it bleed a lot? Did they let you keep the old one?
Look at her! Look at her! You shouldn't be clapping, it's bad for the audio. The piercings, the hair color, the style, her curves, the fact that she doesn't look like a goddamn Barbie. She's the most realistic main character I have ever seen in a family-friendly show or movie, I guess. It's a movie, not a show. I wish it was a show. I've seen more people around me look like her instead of like this or this. Also, I got her piercing, the star piercing, because of course I did. Unfortunately, Ballister is being annoying, refusing Nimona as his sidekick, and he thinks that talking to the director will fix everything.
The real villain is still out there, and I do need help. Not from you.
Oh, fine! Then from who? Guy who cut off your arm? Seriously?
It's complicated, okay?
Oh, baby, you want to communicate. You want to be an adult and use your words. Oh, you're so naive. How cute. Go to prison.
Murderer.
Something fantastic about the movie that I want to point out early so you can pay attention to it as we go through the rest of the movie is the use of shadow and lighting. Most of the times our main characters are engulfed in shadows, which is a clear and deliberate metaphor for being rejected and cast aside. Other characters such as the director and the institution are the opposite, completely accepted and celebrated by anyone around them, and therefore spending most of their time time in the light. On top of that, we have this villainous colors like blacks and reds for our nimona and baluster, contrasted to whites and golds for the institution, the director, Ambrosius, etc. Villains and heroes divided by color and lighting.
Another thing we stole from the graphic novel,
We didn't steal, we adapted.
was light and shadow. Indy did this great thing where a lot of times our heroes were in the shadows, right? People who are not liked, not accepted, were driven into the shadows, and that's something that we really embraced in this movie. I remember when our production designer, Aiden Sagano, said, do you think we could do this whole movie where the characters are in shadow the entire time? And we were like, that sounds like a bad idea. But it's a great idea because you really feel it, how people are celebrated and accepted and how our heroes are not.
This brilliant use of shadows is best exemplified in this shot, where you can see the shadows of the bar imprisoning Ballister as Nimona gives him a way out to safety. Just look at this shot. The production designer Aiden Sagano, I hope I pronounced that correctly, has talked about how one of the artists came up with that shot and everyone was excited about it. Light represented acceptance. It could embrace a character, surround a character, hug a character, but it can also expose. When you're in the light, that's when you're at your most visible and most vulnerable. We use it to divide characters and keep them separated. We also use it to give them a moment of connection and bring them together. Shadow represented the opposite. It was non-acceptance and concealment, and we used it to drive our characters into hiding and force them to suppress their true selves to the point where we could use it literally to keep them imprisoned. It's masterfully done. This man was raised being taught to always follow the rules if you want to be accepted. And now he has to question those rules in order to prove his own innocence, because he knows he's innocent, but everyone else doesn't believe him.
I told you.
No, look, Glorith.
Hey, boss.
How?
Did I know this was gonna happen? Because once everyone sees you as a villain, that's what you are. They only see you one way, no matter how hard you try.
He has to slowly let go of all these beliefs that he was taught.
After you? No. You know there's no toilet in there.
Okay, but I leave.
Do you see it? I'm fucking losing my mind. I love this movie so much. Here we get more Chaos Goblin Nimona, who definitely did not destroy those guards.
How exactly did you get past them?
They were like this when I got here.
I'm gonna be honest, this is one of the first movies where I can point to the camera and be like, this is me, that is me. I'm a Chaos Goblin. I love being a chaotic little shit. And it's just so nice to finally see yourself in a character like this. Long schlong. Long schlong. Long schlong. I can't. Long Schlong is surprised to see his boyfriend. Look at his gay puppy eyes. This man is so gone and in love. I can't. We also get another beautiful metaphor in our lighting before they need to run away and hide in a closet. Get it? A closet? Like a closet? Nimona tells Ballister that she can help him not get maimed and killed if he doesn't freak out. And after he promises not to, she quite literally breaks out of the closet, showing her shape-shifting powers for the first time.
This is the part where you run.
I fucking love this scene. I love how overt it is.
It's a really big moment for Nimona when she first shapeshifts because she's showing him who she actually is, and she's bearing her soul in a lot of ways. She's begging him basically not to lose sight of the Nimona that he knows.
Especially because for years being queer has been subtext. People try to make it quiet, not to shove it down people's throats. Which actually stands for not pissing off the queerphobic overlords trying to make as much money as possible. Just look at her. Look at how much fun she's having while transitioning from one animal to another. She loves this. It brings her joy. It's just liberating to watch trans euphoria on the screen for once instead of trans pain. She intentionally messes with the entire place and breaks the entire castle, mansion, whatever you want to call it. And we stan, both because it looks really fun and I would want to do that, and also because fuck authorities. Back in the evil layer, they debrief about everything that just happened after Balser is done with his beauty sleep, of course. And he doesn't respond very well to finding out that Nimona is different.
You look freaked. You promised you'd hold it together.
You're not human.
You looking for something?
My sword.
It exploded, remember?
You're a monster.
Do not call me that!
What are you?
I'm Nimona.
As an agender person myself, I feel deeply represented when Nimona says that she's just Nimona. I was a tomboy when I was a kid. I wouldn't even let my family grow out my hair. And as you can see in this picture, when my mom refused to cut my bangs, I went ahead and did it myself. And I'm so happy about it in this picture. I'm just a chaos goblin. I always was, I always will be. And I remember being so confused all the time. I was supposed to be a girl, but I didn't even understand what that meant. People told me that I should have been born a boy, but I didn't feel like a boy either. As time went on, I just realized that this is who I am. I'm not a girl. I'm not a boy. I'm not in between. I'm not even really sure what gender really means, if I'm being honest. I'm just me, you know? So when she says,
I'm Nimona,
I just get that so well. Something else I like about this scene is, again, the use of lighting. I love how Balser is in the light while Nimona walks into a corner, perching and distancing herself from him. By questioning Nimona, he's basically pushing her into the darkness, quite literally in this case. Back to the plot, Balser realizes that the squire, the guy with the good hair, would know something about what happened with his sword and why he killed the queen, because he was the last person who touched it. So they decide to finally work together and become a team. And she turns into a shark.
Can you just be you, please?
I don't follow.
Girl, you.
But I'm not a girl. I'm a shark.
The shark has boobs in the comics. The shark has boobs in the comics. I love Andy Stevenson. I love that the shark has boobs. The shark has boobs! On the prep side of the city, as my immortal would call them, Ambrosius is riled up by the director and decides to lead the search to find Ballister.
If anyone can find Ballister, it's me.
Search every street, every shadow. Find Ballister and bring him to me.
We just have to get to the market and find the squire without drawing any attention.
Will you be quiet? Counterpoint. Your plan sucks and it's boring.
I love her. Also, can we talk about how she chooses to be pink, to stand out? She can literally be anything and everything she wants, and she chooses to be the way she is. From being somewhat chubby to representing the color pink. She can be anything and she chooses to be feminine. And even though I'm not a girl, I lived 20 years of my life with others believing that I am. And I am very well versed on knowing what it's like to be taught to hate yourself and the people in your sex the second you open your eyes. Shave your body. Be curvy, not chubby. Not an out there hair color. You have to look modest. Piercings are disgusting. Pink? That's cringy and girly. You shouldn't be like other girls. Black? That's emo. No one likes an emo girl. There are so many less controversial things she could have chosen to be. And she chooses to be herself because she knows who she is and she doesn't care if others don't like that.
Just because I started doodling in a pink pen, I think Nimona ended up being pink. And I was a broke art student. I didn't have that many pens.
Luckily, at the studio, we had a few more pens So we had options of many colors. But I mean, every decision we make visually in animation, which is such an amazing thing about the medium, is it all can come back to theme, character, the narrative. And the idea of that pink became super important in how we were bringing Nimona across. When you're dealing with a female teenage lead character, it's usually a story about who am I? What am I gonna? It's a searching for self. And Nimona comes in, she's incredibly self-assured. She's an incredibly confident character, which is such a breath of fresh air and so amazing to work with. Pink became a super important rallying cry, right? She's a character who can be anything. She doesn't have to be pink, but she chooses it because she's proud of who she is. She likes who she is. She just wants to be seen and accepted for who she is. So that pink is kind of a badge of honor. It's a badge of rebellion in a way when the choices could be endless.
She is proud of herself, and that's so rare. And I know personally, for me, it took me a while to get there, to be comfortable in my own skin and to not care about people commenting on my body hair, the way I dressed, the way I styled my hair when I was a really chubby teen. I cannot explain just how grateful I am that we have a character kids can see themselves in and know that they are amazing the way they are and they don't need to change themselves to fit in or to be accepted and loved. I also appreciate the role Ballister plays here. He tells her that she is too much, that she needs to try to blend in because he was taught the same things and he is pushing it on her just like someone pushed it on him. We queer people especially usually have others in our lives who are just concerned. Those adults want you to be safe. And the easiest way for that is to hide your differences. So they push that on you. But just because it's the easy way, it doesn't mean it's the right way. The right answer would be to expand the idea of what is acceptable and don't let people just bully each other and hurt each other because of their differences. Also, Nimona choosing to be feminine and look feminine reminds me of this tweet. TERFs need to shut up about womanhood. My mom was raised to believe that women are less valuable than men and cried when she learned about trans women because the idea that someone would fight that hard to be a woman was radical and meant that it was something worth being. Which, by the way, is true. Women are awesome and trans women are so goddamn valid.
Monster attack. Monster attack. Seek immediate shelter.
Listen, this alarm, it's very interesting, isn't it? From my own experience in my own life, I've realized that the best way to keep people questioning from why you have so much power is to make them fear the unknown and believe that you are the reason for their safety. That if you were gone, everything would just implode. That the only reason that they are surviving is because you are in charge.
Citizens of the realm, hello. In light of yesterday's horrific attack on the Institute, we are taking every precaution to keep you safe. Please do not be alarmed. This is only a test, and rest assured that the Institute has this situation well in hand. Good day, and may Glorith guide you always.
Oh, don't be alarmed. Effective.
The second we let our guard down, something terrible comes over that wall.
Have you ever even been outside the wall?
No, no one has.
So maybe there's nothing there?
Their don't be alarmed alarm, as Nimona puts it, is strangely reminiscent of those school assemblies we used to have, where we were told about all these countries and people that were out to get us and how lucky we are that the Iranian government is fighting for us and keeping us safe. It's the best way to keep people loyal. Scare them into it, aka propaganda. I also love that when Nimona says that maybe there is nothing on the other side of the wall out to get them, implying that all these generations of knights leading up to Ballister himself were basically training for a non-existent threat. Ballister looks unsure. He doesn't have anything to say. It's as if in all of these years, he never, ever thought to question if what he believes in, what he's fighting for and training for all of his life was founded in reality. Like everyone else in this kingdom, he grew up being taught to kill monsters, and he never thought that they just might not exist because it was so deeply ingrained into his culture. We'll explore this more later. Trust me. Nimona does her best Ballister impression to distract the guards and clear out the subway.
If you see something, say something! It's Ballister Boneheart! I'm evil and I hate everybody! Not as much as I hate myself.
Hope you like freestyle jazz.
13 out of 10, no notes, Oscar worthy. Actually, this movie was nominated for an Oscar in 2024. My favorite part, however, is how nice sees this through the cameras, and he's like,
Something doesn't feel right. He hates freestyle jazz.
I can't believe him killing the queen, but I'll draw the line at freestyle jazz. They're so gay, I just love them so much, man. You have no idea. Pizza rat, pizza rat, pizza rat. Oh boy, one of the first really important scenes, here we go. Okay, so truthfully, this scene hit really close to home for me.
Can you please just be normal for a second?
Normal?
I just think it'd be easier if you were a girl.
Easier to be a girl? You're hilarious.
I mean, easier if you looked human.
Easier for who?
For you. A lot of people aren't as accepting as me. How did you get like this? I'm just trying to understand what I'm working with here.
I'm Nimona.
This is the first time in the movie where Ballister sees Nimona in a non-screamy, high-stakes chase scenes or something, just being herself. She's shape-shifting just to have fun, just because she wants to. And it makes him uncomfortable. That's the bitter truth that no one wants to talk about. It makes people, even good-natured people, uncomfortable to see something outside what they consider to be normal and acceptable. He frames it like he just cares about her. That people wouldn't be as understanding as he is. That he's just concerned and thinks that her hiding herself, even when there is literally no one but the two of them in the subway, is a good idea for her own safety. And Nimona rightfully calls him out for it. Nimona's gender fluidity, and especially Ballister's confusion towards it, reminds me of all these conversations around people having contradictory or multiple pronouns. For example, he, him, and she, her, or any pronouns, which is, again, includes these two contradictory ones. Something that is quite common among many non-binary people, like gender fluid, gender queer, or bigender people. Usually, these types of contradictory pronouns are met with backlash and confusion. People saying that it's not normal because they don't understand it. It's not acceptable because I don't understand how it works. But you do see how short-sighted that is, right? For example, I don't know how advanced physics work, but I don't think it's not real or that we should burn the physicist at the stake for it. I also don't really understand how my phone works, but that doesn't stop me from being distracted by it constantly. Ballister demands an explanation from Nimona about who or what she is, so he can understand her better. The fact that this comes right after Ballister talking about how understanding he is very much deliberate. His acceptance shouldn't depend on how much he understands Nimona's identity. You can and should accept and love someone and show them compassion, even if you don't fully understand what they're going through or why they are the way they are. And I think that is the most important message of this whole movie.
I think the message at its heart is that you don't need to understand someone fully. You don't need to know every single thing about their life. You don't have to share their experience in order to love them and accept them. That's like so much of Ballister's growth in this movie is realizing that, like, you know, Nimona is in some ways unknowable, and that's just her. That's who she is. Like, and I think that that's something that families and, you know, people who are LGBTQ plus or people who love them, that's something that's, you know, love and acceptance should come first, and if you really get to know someone, the understanding will follow.
The amount of times that I've told people I'm queer that's followed with, okay, but what are you really? Are you a lesbian or are you bi? What do you mean you're agender? I'm not gonna use they them pronouns for you. You have boobs and I believe that makes you a girl. And obviously my perception of your gender is more valid than your own. My God said so. Sorry, I'm being a little bit sassy. I've had to experience some things. I also think that you aren't owed an explanation just because you're not being a bigot and being accepting. Because, well, first of all, it's someone's private life that they might not want to share. And secondly, someone's sexual orientation or gender identity brings out a lot of trauma, past trauma that they had to go through because of it. So it might not be easy to talk about those things. They might not be ready to talk about them, or they might just not want to. People will tell you stuff if they want to and whenever they're ready. Until then, make sure that your acceptance of them and the compassion you show them isn't dependent on how much you know about their identity, because that's just not okay and it's way too conditional. It's so funny how when she's giving her fake backstory, she uses phrases like,
I was just a kid. Cute, little, innocent me. That's when I heard it. A song calling me. I summoned my courage, held the coin tight, threw it into the well, and made a wish to one day be trapped on a subway with an uptight knight asking me small-minded questions.
Do you still have that pizza?
Basically the same phrases that transphobic people use when they talk about trans people grooming kids. There's this belief that when you're an innocent kid, you are straight and cisgender, and when you become queer, you're somehow tainted. This belief is so damaging. It's something that I had to work to overcome because it made me hate myself, made me see myself as dirty. It's something that I'm still unlearning because it was so deeply rooted in the way I saw myself as a queer kid. I was born and raised in Iran. I was as sheltered as you can get. Banning queer and trans books? Imagine not even talking about trans and queer people existing because it's such a big taboo. And look at me now. I still turned out to be queer. Well, I was always queer, to be honest. I just found out that I was. When it comes to queer identities, everyone's story is different. But for me, I always knew that I was queer. I just didn't have the words for it. And after I did, I didn't feel like I was allowed to be queer because of my surroundings. I knew what non-binary was. I had a non-binary online friend when I was a tween, but it didn't seem like a viable option for me. Like, others were allowed to be who they are and express themselves, but I couldn't because of my culture and because of the rules and the hatred. I had to choose to either be a girl or a boy. Just like Ballaster, I had all these invisible bars restricting me. Bars like religion, my culture, my unaccepting family members. And it just took me longer to get there. And it was painful. It took a lot of work and a lot of tears. I wasn't indoctrinated into anything. I wasn't groomed by anyone. I was just like this, always. When you're banning books and getting rid of trans rights and healthcare, all you're doing is damaging and hurting those kids and people who need it the most. They are still going to be trans and queer. Now they're just going to be more traumatized about it. It literally doesn't change who we are. You're just damaging us more for no reason. But again, it's different for everyone. The trans experience isn't defined by dysphoria, it's defined by trans euphoria. You do not need to suffer to prove that you are trans. If it makes you happy, then go for it, because you deserve to be happy and accepted and loved for who you are. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Also, the fact that Ballaster is frustrated when he realizes that she was making it all up and she calls him close-minded, but just chooses chooses to break the tension with a joke instead of getting mad at her. Just shows what a good person he actually is. Puppy eyes alert, puppy eyes alert, puppy eyes alert. By the way, I'm like 99.9% sure that Glorith and the institution are an allegory for organized religion.
And always be the will of Glorith.
I'm innocent. I swear on Glorith's name.
I told you.
No, Glorith.
Good day, and may Glorith guide you always.
What in the name of Glorith?
I'm sure that's not related to the theme, and it's not going to come up in the third act at all.
Oh, Squire!
Hi.
We've got to get him out of here quietly.
On it.
Wait, not like that. Not like that either.
You want me to shift? You don't want me to shift? Pick a lane.
And now you're a boy.
I am today.
Gender fluid queen, let's go. Nimona scares the shit out of the poor Squire while Ballister is having a gay panic attack in a car because of his boyfriend and accidentally steals the car. They also kidnap the Squire. I think that's important to mention.
There's an arrow in your leg.
Oh.
Okay, you really need to sit down.
No, it's fine. No, it's totally
look
like
at you. You're not
it's just
fine.
it's a
You're
splinter.
bleeding.
It'll work itself out.
See.
It's just so sweet how much Ballister actually does care about Nimona. Like, he tries to act like he doesn't care about her that much, but he's like, look at him caring and trying to calm her down even though she's not even affected by this arrow at all. He cares about her so much, and Nimona is clearly not used to that. Poor thing. Ballister asks some more questions about her transitioning from an animal to another animal.
What does it feel like? The shape shifting. Does it hurt or does it... Sorry, small-minded question.
And it's such a beautiful juxtaposition to the way he was questioning her earlier in the subway. There, it was accusatory and demanding. He was framing her shape-shifting as something she needs to hide, something reprehensible. However, here, he's genuinely just curious. He just wants to know if it hurts because he cares about her. He's asking all these questions here out of compassion instead of disdain like before.
I feel worse when I don't do it. Like my insides are itchy. You know, like that second right before you sneeze? That's close to it. Then I shapeshift, and I'm free.
What if you held it in? If you didn't shapeshift?
I'd die.
Good Lord, that's horrible.
Don't be so gullible. I wouldn't die. I just sure wouldn't be living.
Okay, so this scene, along with a few other scenes in this movie, make me cry every time I watch them. So I'm trying to not do that right now. The feeling you have just before you sneeze is surprisingly accurate and one of the best ways I have ever heard someone put my experience as being transgender and non-binary into words. Speaking of, as I mentioned before, I am from Iran. Born and raised. And I was actually living there until just a few years ago when I moved out of the country. Contrary to what you might assume, Iran is actually somewhat transgender friendly. Not without its own caveats, that is, but we'll get to those in a second. It's usually surprising to some people when they hear that Iran is actually more trans inclusive than most Western countries. Check out this episode on the Queer as Fact podcast about Maryam Khatun Molkera, the Iranian trans woman who fought for the right to transition in Iran, if you're interested to learn more about it. The link is in the description, as always. I think the reason for this surprise when it comes to transgender acceptance in Iran, we sometimes see progress and acceptance as linear. So for example, we first get rid of the homophobia and then we start trying to root out the transphobia. But in Iran, it's the opposite. Being trans is more accepted than being gay. That doesn't necessarily mean that people are super accepting if you're trans or anything, but it does mean that you have more rights as a trans person than you have as a gay person, which just is the worst thing you can ever be in Iran. That being said, what are the caveats that I talked about? Well, for one, being transgender is still seen as a mental disorder, as a medical problem that needs to be fixed. not an identity that should be celebrated. Another big problem is about how it's all implemented. You see, in Islam, or at least the Islam that is practiced in Iran, everything is quite binary. From your role in the society down to the way you dress and which body parts you're supposed to hide. This means that in a country like Iran, where hijab is mandatory, you can walk down the street and be instantly clocked as a woman because of the fact that you're covering your hair. You also usually have to wear longer clothes that hide your hips. Just generally, you have to hide as much as possible. The more the merrier. I remember we used to joke with my friends that we should all just walk around in the city with like a cardboard box, so everything is covered. There is a giant binary divide, and in all facets of society, it's quite easy to distinguish the two sexes. And it's designed that way on purpose. The divide isn't as big as some other countries. For example, as long as I remember, women could drive in Iran, unlike Saudi Arabia, where they just started letting women drive in 2018, I believe. Thank you, religious overlords. VA fat people are so grateful for the bare minimum you give us. But that being said, there's still a very giant gap. And it's not just big things, like same-sex schools, for example. It's also the little things. Fun fact, the buses in Iran are divided by sexes. Men sit in the front and women sit in the back. And you can never guess where I used to sit to piss everyone off. Women are also usually given lower wages, lower positions, even when they are more educated than their male counterparts. And also, it's just the fact that you don't really have much control over your body. You're seen as a baby-making factory, and you're usually just encouraged to hurry up and marry already. There are also things like women's sports that aren't taken seriously at all and seen as a phase instead of a career path. I can go on, but I think you get the gist. And this gigantic binary divide that's designed to keep people separated so it's easier to control them also goes for trans people. That's right, trans people also get their fill of gender roles. Gender roles for you, gender roles for you. Everyone gets gender roles. Being trans in Iran is only acceptable if you're a binary transgender person. If you're a trans man or a woman planning to completely transition both socially and physically. You don't really get to pick and choose what procedures to do with your body, or if you even want to transition at all. For example, if you're a trans man, not only do you have to take testosterone and top surgery and bottom surgery, but you have to remove your uterus. It's not optional, it's mandatory, because you have to become as close to an assigned male at birth person as you possibly could ever be, or else you won't be accepted and recognized as a man. The reason, once again, mainly comes down to religious gender roles. It's specifically stated in the law that the trans person needs to unveil their true gender if it gets in the way of fulfilling their religious duties. It's so that you can fit into a religious box and the roles that come with it. For example, if you're a trans woman, you need to transition and start wearing the hijab because in the eyes of the law, you are sinning otherwise. And also they want to make sure that you get less pay for your labor at work. That all being said, I'm sure you can imagine how a culture so binary would react to a non-binary or gender non-conforming person. They aren't a fan, that's for sure, not even a bit. And as I mentioned before, that's who I was since I was a kid. I was always just me, and my me was usually quite the opposite of whatever gender roles I was supposed to fulfill. So obviously they really weren't accepting of me at all. However, you might wrongly assume that it was just the big bad patriarchal guys that hated it, but that wasn't the case. People of all backgrounds and sexes were quite cruel to me, but I'd say that their reasoning was different, at least when it comes to the main two genders. Before I tell you about my experiences, however, this isn't proof that Islam is inherently bad and the Middle Easterners are savages or whatever racist ideology you may have. I don't know you. This is my personal experience with a number of people in Iran. It is an unpleasant one, but don't you dare weaponize my pain for your own racism, or I will literally you, okay? This part is gonna be hard. Okay. So ever since I remember, I was always harassed and yelled at by men on the streets. However, it did get worse as I grew up and showed more signs of my assigned gender at birth because it was more evident that I was going against the grain and doing something I wasn't supposed to do. For example, cross-dressing is illegal in Iran, and I was doing that sometimes, and people didn't like it. These people, again, usually men, would sometimes even stop me and physically push me as they were aggressively asking if I was a girl or boy. There were a lot of traumatic moments in the sea of the harassment I faced. I'll tell you about one of them, just to give you some perspective of what it was like. Again, trigger warning for verbal and physical harassment. Imagine me, an 18-year-old, on a sunny day in the summer of 2019. I was walking in the park when a somewhat old man, I'd say like in his 50s, was biking behind me. I had earphones on and I was just minding my own business. And for reference, this is what I was usually wearing at that time because I was too old to just cross-dress without anyone noticing or getting arrested by the cops. I was covering my hair, but I added a masculine touch to it to express myself by stealing my dad's shirt. That's my dad's shirt, yes. So apparently this man was yelling at me and cussing me out while he was biking behind me, but I hadn't noticed because I had earphones on and I was minding my own damn business. I remember some people on the grass staring at me and probably wondering what the hell's going on or why I'm not panicking about this man following me and shouting loudly at me while he asks me to stop. But tellingly, none of the people on that grass came to help. They didn't even say anything to the guy, to me, nothing. I myself noticed the shouting when he was close enough for me to hear it, even through my music. And that was too late because he had just drove his bike in front of me to block my path. I'm gonna be honest, I was a bit too panicked to process or even fully hear what he was saying, well, yelling at me. But I do remember him shouting that he wanted to see if I was a girl or a boy. Yeah, it was bad and I'm tearing up. Okay, it's good. Okay, it's okay. Luckily for me, my fight or flight kicked in and I kicked his bike. While he was trying not to fall over, I had enough time to jump above a railing and just run away. I wish I could tell you that I felt cool and awesome. My friend called me a badass when I told him about it, but I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel like a badass who stuck it to the man. I felt like a prey animal. I was a teenager who barely got away from being essayed in broad daylight by an old man while others sat there and watched, doing nothing about it, just because I was wearing masculine clothing. I didn't feel powerful. I felt defenseless and alone and helpless. I barely left the house the weeks following that incident, and I never took walks in the park near my house after that. Or at least I never took walks alone until the day I left Iran. In other situations, there were a lot of guys that would call me ugly or manly for not shaving or looking androgynous. This one guy called me a boy at like 6 in the morning while I'm jogging in the park. And I'm just like, brother, it's 6 o'clock. Go to bed or get a hobby. Why are you doing that? Why are you catcalling people at 6 in the morning? Do you not have a life? Seriously. That one was just so random. I just don't understand. This whole being called a man as an insult was actually quite common. And it's a very interesting case study for me because that's how they identify, right? That's who they are. Usually cis men calling someone else a man is an insult. Why are they using their own identities as an insult? I'm not a psychiatrist, but if I had to theorize, which is I guess something I'm doing right now, I think maybe a part of it comes down to self-hatred, but it's mostly about guarding your rank in the pecking order. Let's look at it this way. If I look like a man, then who is stopping me from doing manly things and stealing what is theirs? I think it's an extension of the notion that privileged people sometimes see equality as oppression because it kind of levels the playing field for everyone. But more importantly, there's also the bigger issue of being gay. That's not me saying being gay is an issue. I'm saying Iran thinks it's an issue. Being gay is the worst thing you can possibly be in the eyes of an average Iranian guy. One of the funniest incidents of me being catcalled was when this guy yells at me, "Do you want to ride, baby?" Well, he's like riding his motorcycle next to the sidewalk, only to pause, look back at me and go, "Wait, are you a girl or a boy?" I have never ever laughed out loud at being catcalled the way I did then. My favorite catcalling, which is so good. It's just, I can't even be mad. It's funny. It's just too funny to be mad at. Because it kind of showed that he didn't care about my gender for a second there, I kind of wanted to tell him, like, look into bisexuality and multiple spectrums. Just to see, maybe you'll figure something out by yourself, my guy. My guy. Why did I say like my guy? But obviously I didn't, because I couldn't. I wish I could, but you know. I think that example is a good segue to talking about why body hair specifically sets these men off so much. In their eyes, body hair is male, not just masculine, but male. A definitive proof of manliness. Don't get me wrong, they're not stupid. They also know that assigned female at birth people grow body hair. But the binary is so drilled into everyone's head that they know that if you are AFAB, you are probably shaving it off because you are forced into it. You don't have another choice but to shave it off. Only guys get to keep their body hair without shame, feeling comfortable to show it off instead of, at the very least, covering it up with like pants or long sleeve clothes, right? So when they do see someone that has body hair, but they're still attracted to them, it scares them a lot because they don't want to be gay. They are scared of being gay. Really scared of being gay for some reason. Jesus Christ. Making this video made me realize how much I'm grateful not to be back home anymore. So the smallest threat to their heterosexuality, or what they deem as a threat, is enough to set them off and make them so angry. How dare you not conform to your gender roles? You are confusing me. You are turning me gay. You know, I do joke a lot with my friends about that guy, that he was probably bi. But let's be honest, there are unfortunately a lot of bisexual and pansexual men in countries like mine that feel ashamed of themselves because of the rampant homophobia and the internalized homophobia they were taught, and it makes them lash out. I mean, like, how did some guy notice my body hair as I'm jogging far away from him, coming slowly towards him? It's just, he was staring. Then he got mad that I have body hair because he's like, I like the boobs. Why the boobs attached to the body hair? What the fuck is this? They like the boobs. I hate the boobs. And honestly, it's not even just AFAB people either. They also harass any man who shows any feminine characteristics, who plucks their eyebrows or grows their hair out, or God forbid, shaves their body. It's the worst crime you can imagine. You're basically gay, bro. It's really bad. It's really hard and sad seeing all of it, and looking back, seeing all of this repression and depression that it causes. It's just sad. honestly. When it came to girls, however, I have a bit more insider knowledge of why they treated me badly. Usually it came down to two main reasons. One of my best friends who bullied me for my body hair all through high school and then apologized to me afterwards. It's fine, we're fine. She told me that she harassed me because she was angry that I didn't have to shave when she did. She didn't like shaving, she didn't want to shave, but because of the rigid boxes everyone is put into, she felt like she had to shave. So when she saw someone else not doing what she was forced to do, she got mad. Her anger wasn't about me. It was just directed at me because it was easier than directing it at the entire patriarchy and trying to change the entire system. So that's what she did. The second reason is what I call the sides. Since Iran is so binary, the sides take up a big chunk of everyone's identity. You know, the whole women are from Moon and men are from Mars or whatever it is. I'm not gonna look it up. You can't make me. Well, I was the antithesis to that. I was gender non-conforming, a non-binary person who didn't fit into any of those two groups. As a result, a lot of women felt like I was betraying my side. Like I was saying that being a woman is bad and I'm choosing not to be one because I'm ashamed of it. The truth is that I was never a woman to begin with. I would get harassed a lot by random ladies in the streets. I would get questioned and yelled out of bathrooms for not looking like a girl, and pretty much any female-only area I went into. I had to stop going to public swimming pools because the women didn't feel safe being around me and they would harass me until it crossed the line into assault. When a few of them came into the showers while I was basically mostly naked just to check to see if I'm a girl or a boy. That was pretty traumatizing, as I'm sure you can imagine. I didn't go swimming a few years after that, and I still don't. I don't. I also still struggle to be in female-only spaces when I'm like forced into them because I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe in female-only spaces, which is really funny because that's what TERFs say about trans women. But I've never felt unsafe around a trans woman. I felt unsafe around some cis women though, that's for sure. I don't really know what's worse, to be honest. Being yelled at and followed by some guy in his 50s or being assaulted by a bunch of middle-aged ladies in a swimming pool. Vote now. Vote in the comments. Which one do you think is worse? I'm sorry. Humor is my coping mechanism, okay? And it's been a few years. I'm mostly okay. Don't worry about me. That is why I could not care less when someone stares at my arms or looks at me weird. I fought for this. I fought for this self-expression. It may seem silly to you, it may seem like it's not worth it to you, but it was worth it to me, and I did it. I got mistreated so much to do it, and I'm gonna wear it like a badge of pride, man. And if you have a problem with this, or okay, I have to get up for that one. God damn it. The things I do for this YouTube video. Or if you have a problem with this, can you even see it? This, it has a panda on me. If you have a problem with those, first of all, I'm surprised you made it this far, but also honestly, I don't care. Why do you? Why do you care about someone else's body hair? Go get a better hobby. But, I would like to say that shaving your body hair on its own isn't anti-feminist or something. Like, that is not the point, okay? If you want to shave your body hair because you like it that way, or just, I don't know, it's just your preference, that is completely fine. I am not the Supreme Court. I cannot and will not tell you what to do with your own body. I'm just saying there shouldn't be a default where people are forced to do a specific thing or else. You know? Anyway, back to Nimona. Can you tell I'm ADHD? Anyway, the dystopian world of this movie feels really familiar to me. I know exactly how she feels, trying to be herself in it. You don't fit in with the girls, you don't fit in with the boys, you don't fit in with the conservative gays that want you to just pick a side and stop making the rest of us look bad, while all you want is to just exist. That's it. Look at me. Is this hurting you? Me existing. Is it having any effect on your life? Because me not expressing myself would hurt me deeply. Nimona's right when she says that it's like the moment before you sneeze. It's this urge to be who you truly are. And yes, you can stifle it and repress it, but it will always be there, demanding your attention. And it does genuinely feel like dying to repress it. I know it's a cliche, but we do only live once. And even if you believe in afterlife, we do only live once in this life. So why not be the best version that makes us the happiest? Why should we hide ourselves? Why should I? Just because some other person is uncomfortable? How is that fair? How's that my problem when I'm not hurting anyone? Trans flag alert, trans flag alert, trans flag alert, trans flag alert. That was the first thing I noticed when I was watching this movie with my friend. I love this movie so much.
Start talking.
He wants blood.
Here, look.
I'm in the locker room, and you are looking at history in the making. Ballister's armor.
Oh my god.
This is the part you have to see.
The director set me up. She killed the queen.
So it was the director, because of course it was. She looks like she'd call me slurs I've never heard before. Ballister struggles with what to do with this information. He doesn't want people to know the truth because it would cause doubt against the institution, and he still believes in them, in their cause, even after they tried to maim and kill him a bunch of times.
This video could damage people's faith in the Institute.
No duh.
Look, I don't know why she framed me, but the Institute's not the problem. The director is. That's why I'm taking this to Ambrosius.
This is the man who cut off your arm.
Cut off my arm? He disarmed a weapon.
I think that's accurate and realistic storytelling. People don't just change their minds overnight, even if there are many signs as to why they should. Even when they realize that they're disposable to their higher-ups, or I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, realize that their mother is very abusive, you still have a loyalty to them. You still believe that they have your best interests in mind and that they just made a mistake. That if you could just talk to them, just make them understand that everything will be okay. In Ballister's warped viewpoint, the institution isn't the problem, the director is. It's easy to single out one person and act like if they were better, then everything would be perfect. But the truth is that usually there is more to it than that. Institution, laws, rules, governments, they are designed to hate and discriminate sometimes. It's not just one person, it's the idea. And until we get rid of that idea, we're just going to cycle through directors and director clones forever and ever.
You should be questioning everything right now. The will of Glorith, the Institute, the wall. What's it all really for?
For protecting the realm.
Oh, you mean from villains like you? Or monsters like me?
That is something that Ballister doesn't understand yet. And that is fair. That is very fair. It takes time to deconstruct things like this. I know it took me years, many years, to do just that. And I had the privilege of getting access to different ideas and viewpoints through the internet. Which is why Big is trying to ban other viewpoints, by the way, but you already know that. When you were spoon-fed propaganda since you were born, telling you to hold up random restrictive ideas because they are what keep you safe and your culture from imploding, it's not easy to even imagine believing in something else. It's horrifying. I think what made it easier for me to deconstruct everything, I believe in the people and the relationships I have with them. They are my anchor. People are the bond we need. We help each other. We need each other. We're social animals. And as much as I can look around and see disdain and hate, I can also see the good and the helpful and the caring, the people who are trying to do their best. I mean, look at this movie alone. It went through changing studios, a pandemic, being cancelled by Disney completely, and people still made it. It's still here for us to watch. It took over 1,120 artists and producers to complete it. Those are people who care about us, who wanted to tell our story no matter what. I think that alone gives me hope that things will be okay at the end. Fuck the director though, she can fucking die for all I care. Ballister goes to show his boyfriend the proof of his innocence, but this bitch is there.
Ambrosius, the director killed the queen.
Another desperate lie.
He's not a liar.
Says the miscreant, whispering in his ear.
I want to strangle her. I hate her. The fact that she's quite literally whispering in his ear when she accuses Nimona of doing the same to Ballister. The imagery of the devil and the angel on their shoulders, but it's different because Nimona is the angel and she sucks. The director sucks. I hate her. Okay, I'm okay. Anyway, a fight breaks out and Nimona makes this one guy pee his pants while these two have a gay sword fight.
Did I ever mean anything to you? Or was it all just a lie?
Says the guy running around with a monster!
Don't call her that. She's smart, kind, and quite sophisticated.
That guy just beat his armor. He beat his armor.
As one does.
It's okay. Monster.
I got you, kid.
God. Okay, this is where I started full on crying on my first viewing. And every viewing after that, I still cry to this movie, even though I watched it like more than 20 times at this point. This is something that a lot of queer people experience, this fear-mongering that trans people and gay people are groomers trying to get your children or whatever. It has real effects on real people. You know that, right? It harms everyone. It's not even just the trans people. It's not just the queer people. Going back to what I said before, I think using your own gender as an insult and implying that body hair, something you yourself have, is dirty and disgusting is a prime example of the self-hatred it causes. But I have an example even closer to my heart for you. So a few years ago, when my brother was 6 or so, he and my mom came to visit me. While he and I were hanging out on the couch playing with my laptop, he saw my painted nails, and in like the super sad, low baby voice, he goes, "God, I wish I could wear nail polish too." Considering that my mom always wears some sort of color on her fingers, and so does my little sister, who's a little bit older than him, I knew that this wasn't the first time he had shown some sort of interest in nail polish. I told him he can wear some if he wants and that I can help him put it on his little fingies if he likes me to. He replies, "But nail polish is only for girls, not for boys." And I countered that by showing him pictures of male celebrities or YouTubers that wore nail polish before, like Harry Styles, Jacksepticeye, Curtis Connor, etc. When I tell you this boy's eyes were shining from excitement, I am not joking. He was so happy to see men with painted nails and was about to ask me to do it for him when my mom came into the room. She had heard our conversation and wasn't happy about it, that's for sure. She started yelling, accusing me of trying to groom my brother into being confused about his gender like I am, and told my brother that if he ever does anything girly, like wearing nail polish, for example, that he will be disowned. Yes, she said that to the 6-year-old. She more like screamed it at the 6-year-old, but the point still stands. My mom isn't a good person, and she reminds me of a certain someone, but that's beside the point. The point is that these kinds of accusations of queer people trying to groom kids, which by the way, isn't what grooming means at all, but conservatives were never known for their accuracy, I guess. This shit is so isolating. Being treated like, well, monster, basically, and someone that people need to be vigilant about, not to get corrupted by, something you need to avoid. It's so fucking harmful. Honestly, harmful is a gross understatement, but I don't know how to describe being demonized for encouraging people to be themselves and doing the same yourself.
Did you see the way that little girl looked at me? Kids. Little kids. They grow up believing that they can be a hero if they drive a sword into the heart of anything different. And I'm the monster?
I just wanted my brother to accept and celebrate his less conventional parts. To know that he's free to make decisions about his own body as long as they don't hurt anyone else. And it ended with him crying, me crying, and him usually avoiding me after that. It hurts. It hurts so much. It makes you see yourself as a disgrace, a monster, just like they see you. And as a result, it makes you wish you were dead so you could stop hurting and supposedly corrupting others.
I don't know what's scarier. The fact that everyone in this kingdom wants to run a sword through my heart. Or that sometimes I just want to let them.
It's both therapeutic and scary to see yourself on the big screen, to see how common it actually is to feel this way. In 2022, the Trevor Project deduced that over 50% of trans and non-binary youth have seriously considered attempting suicide, with 17% actually going through with it. I am one of those people. I don't live in America, but I am one of the millions of people all over the world that used to believe that I'm a monster and that I'm better off dead, because then it would be easier for everyone involved. All these bans and legislations, all these people who have never even probably talked to a trans person before, they dehumanize us. They tell the world that we're better off hiding or dead, how we are the problem for just being who we are. And these things affect real individuals. I feel like most of these people don't understand that. It's easy or easier to hate faceless demons you made up and you believe are out to get your kids and family values by making them wear nail polish of all things. But it's usually harder when you get to know these people and you see the effects that your actions have on them. Okay. These are the effects of it all. When the whole world tells you that you're unwanted, that you're disgusting, that you're monstrous, when they tell that to literal children, when I heard them when I was 4, 5, 6, this is what happens. We internalize your words. We believe them because we don't know any better, because we're children and we try to cope however we can, as damaging as some of those methods may be. Even then, unfortunately, some of us don't survive. They don't make it. And you know what's the worst part of it all? For a lot of people, like my mom, for example, they're drowning so deep in their hatred that even seeing the real effects of their actions won't change their minds. They don't care. They won't even flinch. I'm from Iran. I know how it is. I'm not delusional, thinking that seeing my scars is somehow going to cure transphobia all of a sudden. I'm not stupid. Some of these people are heartless and they wish I were dead and that I had no access to healthcare, and me hurting isn't going to make them care all of a sudden. But I believe in the good of many others. I believe that most people are in Ballister's shoes. People that were like my brother. They were that kid that grew up being taught to kill the parts of themselves that are different from the norm, to hate anything that isn't familiar, but they are still willing to give the unfamiliar a chance. People who at least try to understand other viewpoints, even if they stumble and make mistakes along the way. People who care and are willing to question their beliefs in the face of adversity. I've mostly told you sad stories, so let me tell you a nicer one this time. Last year at my old job, I met this very sweet old gentleman. I think he's in his 70s or his 80s. I'm not sure exactly which one because I think it's rude to ask. And he's probably one of the most accepting individuals I've ever met in my life. When we first met, I honestly thought he would not respect my pronouns or even get it. But not only did he respect me and my pronouns, he keeps checking up on me every week ever since last year. The truth is that when I first met him, I made a very wrong and ageist assumption, and I was mistaken, so very mistaken. This man also randomly helped me financially and sent me a bunch of money when I was struggling. I didn't ask him to do it. He just found out, and apparently he made a PayPal for the sole reason to send me money. I don't know. Some people are just really nice and I don't understand why. There are a lot of people that suck out there, but there are more people that are just like the sweetest, good-natured people you will ever meet in your life. I believe that there is good in most people because I've seen it. And you should believe it too. When it comes to things like self-harming, it's easy for an outsider who's never been there to be like, oh, don't self-harm, it'll get better, don't do that. But it's much easier said than done. Trust me, I know. I know. It's so freaking hard to believe that things will change for the better one day when you're drowning in hate coming from all places. From your own mind, from your parents, from your society, from your friends, from the internet. It's suffocating. But if it helps any of you, take it from me, the 22-year-old Iranian that ran away from home. It does get better. There's so many people that care about you, that love you, and will love you if you just give them time and give it time so they can find you. You know? It's so unfair that we have to fight tooth and nail just to survive. And on top of that, having to look for acceptance in people and finding accepting people instead of it being the default, like cishet people have it, for example. But all of that being said, there are accepting people out there. Those people do exist and you will meet them. Also, if you can, try to find a less harmful coping mechanism. Because not only does self-harming, well, harms and hurts you, in the future when you look back on the scars, they are an unfortunate reminder of the hate that the world gave you and made you believe that you did not deserve. And by that point in your future, you might just not want to be reminded of that, especially when you're in a better place. Whatever you do, just hang in there, okay? I love you. A lot of other people love you, and you'll be okay. Okay, back to the movie. Ballister also understands how harmful it is to live in a place where everyone hates you and goes into dad mode.
We have to get you out of here. We'll go over the wall. We won't stop until we find someplace safe. Okay, we'll go. No matter what we do, we can't change the way people see us.
You change the way you see me.
This scene is so important. In comparison, this is the first scene where he finds out about Nimona's shape-shifting. Here, he reached for his sword. He was one of the kids that Nimona is talking about. One of the people that was taught to hate and drive a sword into the heart of anything that's different. And look at him now. He isn't perfect, but he's come a long way. And I can't help but be proud of him for it. Meanwhile, on the light side of the city, Goldie here goes to the director to ask her about why Ballister was accusing her of being the one who killed the queen. And he actually gets a confession out of the director before she stabs him to death by a sword. And not just any sword, his boyfriend's sword. The audacity of this bitch.
So, yes, I framed Ballister. I killed the queen.
You. That and my sidekick. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Was my acting okay?
Psych! It was Nimona, and now they have evidence. Let's go! Also, the real Ambrosius sees Ballister's sword on the ground and finally starts using his brain for once. I would like to talk in depth about the director for a second.
Ever since I was young, I've had the same nightmare. I find a crack in the wall. I yell out, but no one listens. And the crack grows bigger and bigger until the wall crumbles. And the monsters pour in.
What she says here makes sense. Just like Ballister, she was also a kid, raised in this same culture of fear-mongering and hatred for anything that is different from the norm. And as a result, she was willing to kill the leader of the country and probably her friend, a very close friend, considering that she was her right-hand woman, just to keep the status quo. The queen was pushing for change, and that scared the shit out of the director.
Yes, I framed Ballister. I killed the queen. Glorith did whatever it took to keep the monsters out, and so will I.
She is also, unfortunately, a product of her upbringing. Just like Bal, just like Ambrosius. What makes her different from the other ones, though, is the fact that she chooses to stay closed off, not to listen to differing opinions, whether it's of the queen or Nimona. She would never in 1,000 years sit in a train with Nimona, someone who is so fundamentally opposed to everything the director stands for, let alone have a conversation, a non-judgmental conversation with her. The willingness to listen to other opinions, especially the ones that go against yours, takes a lot of maturity. And unfortunately, the director is quite immature. You don't have to, and you obviously shouldn't, agree with everything someone else has to say. And of course, there is a line there. For example, you don't even need to listen to the TERFs. But when it comes to non-extreme, normal people things, it's good to listen to other people talk. Like, I think if the director had just given Ballister or Nimona a chance to prove themselves, to just see that who they are inside isn't this big baddie that is out to get her, things would have gone so much better. This idea that you should get to know people instead of just judging them based on your preconceived notions is something that the directors intentionally embedded even in the animation of the movie.
The closer you are to a person, a building, an object, the more detail we see. The further they are away from us, the geometry and the textures of the character will change. They will get more simple as they hit certain distances from the camera. The closer we get to someone or something, the more we see it for what it really is.
That's the dignity we all deserve, and I don't think we do that enough. I'm fine with you thinking I'm an asshole as long as you come to that conclusion after you get to know me. You don't have to accept me, but I do want my fair share and not have somebody else tell you who I am. So if you can, give that queer family member or strange friend a chance. You guys might have more in common than you first believed. Anyone who has ever felt different from the so-called norm will see themselves in Nimona. But it's important to see yourself in Ballister too, and to recognize that we all have the ability and obligation to understand and treat others with the respect they deserve. The director, being the true villain, also plays with the lighting in the animation that we talked about earlier. She seems safe, she's trustworthy, adorned in light anywhere she goes. It plays with our perception that evil looks a specific way. Dark, gloomy, with blacks everywhere, looks evil, sounds evil, has an evil laugh mayhaps. It teaches kids that sometimes, usually actually, evil looks comforting. They represent mundane evil that we run into the most in the world. Stevenson says, it's the people who feel the end justify the means in the name of perceived safety and don't think too far beyond, this is my job and this is what I will do because this is how things are done. The dudes released a clip of the director's confession and let the whole realm go crazy over their authoritative institution being corrupt. Can you blame them? There has never been a corrupt governmental power in the world. How are they supposed to know that giving a small group of people detached from ordinary life the power to control and dictate every aspect of their day-to-day life is a bad idea?
My Scotty Dog will not pay your tyrannical toll. He rallies the oppressed woodland creatures and starts a rebellion. Squirrels, scale the castle wall!
She's just so me for real.
I'm still taking the 600 gold.
What?
You didn't tell me you you could breathe fire.
Oh.
Metal.
I want to scream, but I don't want to hurt your ears. I love it. I love this part. I love this part. Her feeling comfortable enough to not censor her feelings and her powers, only to realize that, oh no, I did something that he didn't know about. Is he going to reject me now? And thinking that she won't get accepted again. And he doesn't even make a big deal out of it. It's just, I can't with this movie. It tugs on my heartstrings, you know? It's really nice. It's almost criminal how beautiful it is. And by that I mean give me more. Give me all the queer movies. Give them to me, please. I'm waiting. Do it. Just now. Andy Stevenson, give me more. And now, an intermission with Charlie. Welcome to trivia night, or day, or afternoon. I don't know when you're watching this video. So to be frank, I did a lot of research for this video, and I did it because I wanted to. I do not regret a second of it. I just wanted to know every little detail I could find. But sadly, I couldn't fit everything during the commentary of the movie because it would ruin the pacing, and some of it is just trivia. It's not necessarily important, it's just a cool fact to know about the movie if you like facts to know about things. So this is for anyone else that's on the same boat as me, the I have a hyperfixation and I need to know everything about it boat. Let's learn some cool stuff about the movie that adds some depth to it as well. At some point during the production of the movie, when it was still in Blue Sky, the studio that then was sold to Disney, Karen Ryan, one of the producers, invited the staff of Blue Sky to come and talk to the directors about what the movie meant to them. Among those people, the main group of people who cared about this movie were the LGBTQ community. One of the biggest things that we got from those conversations is also that, like the rest of us, all of those people grew up looking to animation as a guide to help them navigate the world. Unfortunately, for a long time, certain people have grown up with animated movies that say that the world doesn't include them. Those conversations really helped us realize how important it is to actually show the diversity of the world on screen. It's everything. It's so incredibly important to do that, because if you don't show the world the way it is, it can make some kids think that there's something wrong with them, and that's unfair. This is just one of my favorite things about the directors and makes me emotional whenever I think about it. Like, they cared. They asked queer people about their experiences and then made sure to stay authentic to that diversity when they made the movie. And in my humble opinion, I think they did a really good job, and they should adopt me. Maybe, please, I want to be your kid. Speaking of Blue Sky Studios, the animation studio that Disney bought from Fox and then closed it off in the pandemic, they were around 75% done with the movie when Disney shut them down. And even though they couldn't include the stuff that was developed under Disney because of copyright reasons, they still included the name of every Blue Sky staff member that worked on the original movie, which made the credits so long, like 15 minutes long or so, but it's worth it. It's nice. There are also a couple of homages in the movie to the studio that you can see on the screen right now as I'm talking. This is just cute and shows how close of a family they were there. Number 3, if you're keeping score. When they started shopping the movie around to try to find a new place to make it, they came across Annapurna. The founder of Annapurna is Megan Ellison, an open lesbian. She told them that they have to make it there and gave them full permission to include anything they wanted to the movie that they previously weren't allowed to do it under Disney, allegedly.
But I think it let us find Megan Ellison and Annapurna, helped us find our friends at Netflix. Thank you. Yes. I mean, these movies take a village. This movie took multiple villages, as you saw. And really finding someone like Megan who saw the story, and believed in it, who felt like the story had been written for her, and made the horrible business decision of investing her own money to pull this out of the Disney vaults. Like James Bond villain level money is what we like to refer to. But it allowed us to make the movie the way we saw, and when we got to Netflix, the only thing they said is, what haven't you been able to do? Like, what aspects of the story were you feeling resistance to? And we just went all in.
So thank you, Megan Ellison. I love you. Thank you for the movie. I mentioned this one in passing before, but there were over 1,120 people, artists and producers, working on the movie from 10 different countries across 12 different time zones. And it took them non-stop working for 20 months to finish this movie. So let me make it clear, this movie was possible because of the queer people and the allies who fought for it. And that proves to me that we are going to be okay no matter what, because there are people out there that are willing to go to fight with us and for us. As Nimona herself says it, something, we win. Something, we win. Another fun fact, when the movie first premiered in Annecy Festival in France, the crowd gave a standing ovation for the whole 15 minutes that the credits were playing.
We were all a part of something, and it was just like probably one of the coolest things that's ever happened to me. I only figured out I was crying because someone ran up and handed me a tissue. They just kept clapping. And we were like, do we stay? Should we go? Like, what happens now? Like, should someone tell them to stop? Like,
yeah, I think Karen and I sort of like, we should go. They're just being really polite now.
Karen's trying to get us out.
I did. Yeah, I was like ushering us out. Like, they just want us, we have to leave. And then I got pushed back in, so.
I'm like, no, you're supposed to stand there, dummies.
And that just makes my heart glow, you know? Last, but certainly not least, because this is the coolest fact in my opinion, the characters in Nimona have different eye rings. Eye rings are apparently the little reflective light that the characters have in their eyes. And in this movie, it's different based on their personalities. Nimona's is sort of fire-shaped. Ballister's is a square because he's a square. Sorry, I love the guy, okay? It's just rigid. Ballister's rigid. For the other institution people, it's usually a diamond. That's just good filmmaking, honestly. Like, the attention to detail. I love this movie, and I love everyone who worked on it, and I want to be adopted by every single one of these people. And that's it. That's it for the trivia night. Ladies, gentlemen, and anyone outside the binary. I hope you enjoyed my fun little facts that I picked out for you myself. And now let's get back to the movie. I'm sure the third act is like super chill. While Nimona is napping, Golden Boy messages Ballister and asks for a rendezvous between lovers turned enemies. How scandalous.
You got 30 seconds.
30 seconds?
It's a lot more time than you've given me.
I'm here to save you.
You know what? You were so full of...
Hey, can I get you guys something?
Nachos! And hold the olives. He's allergic.
They're literally an old married couple. I need one of those shirts that says, I love my gay dads. I love my emotionally damaged gay dads. Ambrosius shows Ballister an old scroll depicting a monster that looks suspiciously like our Nimona. Meanwhile, on the news, the director lies out of her lying liar ass and tells everyone that it wasn't her in the video.
That was the monster. Working with the real queen killer could be anyone. Your spouse, your child, your best friend, the person sitting next to you.
I wonder where I've heard that before. Listen, we need to talk about it. There's no secret that the institution in the movie is reminiscent of a religious institute, like a church or a mosque in my case. They literally use Glorith's name as a stand-in for God. It's not subtext, it's not subtle. It's text punching you in the face, basically. Nate has talked about growing up in an evangelical Christian household, where even the books he was reading as a kid were being monitored and censored to make sure he doesn't read anything impure or whatever. And honestly, as someone who does come from an incredibly restricted culture in the name of religion, this is exactly what they do. They create fear and division because if they don't, they'll lose. They know they have no ground to stand on. They use fear-mongering and moral panics to control people. And No, I am not saying that all religious people are bad. That is not true at all. What I am saying is that organized religions trying to dictate and control other people's lives has proven to be abusive, especially to those who differ from the norm. In Iran, at least, they weaponize people's beliefs and use it to keep and expand their powers. It's literally what the director is doing, and it's frustrating that people like Ambrosius or even Ballister don't see it.
She's Glorith's monster. She's come back to finish what she started, and she's using you to do it.
But she's my friend.
Aren't I more than that?
Honestly, Ambrosius is one of the most frustrating characters in this movie. I just want to grab him and shake him until he stops being stupid. I understand why he is the way he is based on his upbringing, but god damn it. Jesus Christ, man. And speaking of Ambrosius and Ballister, you guys are pretty smart. I'm sure you've realized by now that they are metaphors for transphobic queer people. And by metaphor, I mean that they are quite literally queer and transphobic. So, and quite frankly, I feel like Matt and Natalie put it so well and better than I ever could.
And I remember going to college. I moved to New York for college and seeing other queer people who were way more outwardly queer than I was, who, you know, other gay guys who were way more feminine, who were super into drag before I had really accepted an interest in that within myself. And like seeing people who were like, quote unquote, weirder or freakier than me, it was like, oh, it like soothed a part of me that I was like, I've always wanted to be on the other end of thinking someone was weird. We all deal with that. Like, oh, everyone fucking thinks I'm a weird. Everyone thinks I'm a faggot. It's a dangerous thing to feel good about, because then that could lead to me forming actual resentment towards these people, thinking that it will stop other people from having that resentment towards me.
But I definitely had a couple years where I was kind of like getting dangerously invested in the idea of myself as one of the good ones, because it was like I needed to believe that to feel like I was going to be okay. Like I was lovable. But I also kind of noticed that the way that my thinking was getting uncomfortably cruel, and I was sort of fixated on, I was rejecting what I thought was unacceptable in myself.
By the way, you should watch the full episode. It's good. It's really freaking good. Go check it out. The link is in the description in the Google document with everything else. Everything's labeled and you won't have problem finding everything, okay? Back to the point, I think one of the worst things that bigots ever did to our community was to divide us and pit us against ourselves. To make us hate each other and try to be one of the good guys to get less discriminated against, because then we'd be too busy to stand up against them and we'll do some of their work and hate and discriminate on each other. That's what the director did too, and unfortunately it worked. Ballister, who hasn't completely deconstructed everything he was taught yet, turns on Nimona in the heat of the moment, accusing her of trying to corrupt him and turn him into a villain and a monster just like she is.
Is this you?
Who have you been talking to?
Tell me this isn't you.
You think that I would do that? That's who I am? Even now, with this, think about everything that we have been through together.
I'm thinking about everything we've done together. Broken out of jail, stolen cars, kidnapped people, manipulated people.
I was helping you.
You were using me. You wanted them to see a villain, someone else to hate, so you wouldn't be alone. Because you're not a sidekick. You're a...
What? I'm a what?
You know what you are.
All based on this damn scroll that he saw. Instead of trusting the person who he spent so much time with, who he bonded with, who helped him out of a prison and getting killed multiple times, who believed him to be innocent even when his own boyfriend wouldn't. He still betrays her after all of that over an old piece of paper. And Nimona runs away. Really, can you blame her? Her only friend betrayed her and called her a monster based on other people's perception of her. And it's not even the first time that it's happened. God, okay. This part always makes me so emotional, goddamn. As a trans person growing up in a country with so little acceptance, trying to fit in and failing was all I knew. Exactly like nimona. It seemed like no matter what I tried to do, I just could not shrink myself down enough to fit in with the group. I just wasn't enough. I wasn't enough of a girl. I wasn't enough of a boy. And as a result, I felt so lonely. Like I didn't belong there or anywhere really. Nimona went through a similar situation, it seems, until this cute little girl, which I admit I thought was a boy at first, welcomes her into the light, accepting her for who she is. She shows Nimona love, that she's valuable, that her shape-shifting is marvelous and beautiful, not something to be scared of, until...
No, stop! Stop! She's my friend!
She's a monster. Glorith? Glorith.
Go back to the shadows from whence you came.
That is Glorith. That is the symbol of all this hate and prejudice. She's the hatred that festered into this land for 1,000 years. And she was fine with Nimona's differences until they taught her otherwise. To see Nimona, her best friend, as a monster. And then they rewrote the story, turning Nimona from a scared little girl trying to protect herself into a scary beast out to get them. And that's what they do. They treat you like a monster. And when you fight back, they weaponize that against you too. They use your anger at being mistreated as an excuse to show why you are actually a bad person, as proof of why you deserved all the hate you got in the first place. It's so goddamn isolating. It hurts. This all just hits too close to home for me. I'm sure you can tell. The hate, the isolation, the feeling that no one, not even one person, is willing to see you for who you really are instead of what others see you as. It's suffocating and unbearable. It's easy to say like, oh, just let it wash over you. Just don't care about the haters, man. But imagine for a second being born in a culture that hates you. Every single person you interact with hating you if they knew something as unimportant as who you're attracted to. I remember hanging out with my friends back home or visiting my old middle school principal that I adored so much. All these super lovely people who cared about me, who loved me. All I could think about while sitting there looking at their faces, what would happen if they knew I was trans or attracted to girls? Would they instantly hate me? Would they tell me to get the hell out and that they never want to see me again? If they do that, then did they really love me if their love is so conditional? But it's something that I cannot control and something that's not even hurting anyone. It made me feel so disconnected from everyone around me. I could never truly let my guard down and trust someone. And I never felt safe, ever, for 20 years. Once in 11th grade, my classmates and I were sitting in a circle chatting. The conversation somehow shifted to lesbians. That's when my best friend chimes in as she's sitting next to me and she goes, I would never trust a lesbian to go to their house because they would obviously R-word me. And again, like she's sitting here and she's saying this close to my ear. I remember my breathing slowing down and my chest tightening and trying my best not to burst into tears right there. Trying not to shake and scream or show any emotions about how what she just said was so painful to hear. And honestly, I don't really remember what others said in her response, other than that they laughed and mostly agreed with her. Because at that point, I was drifting away. I was dissociating and thinking about all the dozens of times that she had came to my house, that my best friend had changed her clothes in front of me, the times we cuddled together. And I was wondering if she would see me as a pervert, if she had just known that I was into girls, even if I wasn't into her and never saw her in that light. For 20 straight years, I was in fight or flight mode. And unless you have experienced that yourself, you will never truly understand the toll that kind of existence takes on you. You cannot know what it's like growing up knowing that everyone around you is primed to hate you and you're just forced to endure it because you're a minor and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't escape it no matter how hard you try.
What are you? You even human? Just be a girl.
There is no place for you.
Don't lie to me.
Go back to the shadows from whence you came.
Something really wrong with you. What are you? You know what you are.
As Nimona gives into her helplessness, all the life and color drains from the world around her. Nimona is color. She wears pink like a badge of honor. So her choosing to become the scary, shadowy monster of fear is her giving up. She's tired of fighting. And God, is it exhausting to try to fight back and prove people wrong when they are so dead set on hating you for no reason. This hate and pain that others forced upon her by refusing to see her for who she really is. For literal centuries, that is. So she finally starts seeing herself as a monster too. Nate has spoken about how important he was for him, that the movie shows Nimona's anger and pain. One thing that I think is really important about the story for me, and it was really important to see in the movie, was the darkness at the heart of it. Nimona is not just quirky, she's not just fun. She's not just a cool kick-butt protagonist. She has a lot of fear and a lot of pain at her heart. And that comes out as anger. That was something that I found very cathartic at the time. I was looking for an outlet for my emotions, and I felt like I wasn't really able to express them. But through her, I could do that. At the end, she becomes this monster. The monster everybody's been telling her that she is. And she's just like, you know what? You want a monster, you got one. Here I am. That was something that I really needed to see, and it was kind of a hard sell for a female character. Then and now. Nimona throws a table over when she's angry. She cries her heart out when she's sad and hurting. She jumps in joy when she's happy. She's quite expressive no matter the emotion. And that's so very important. And honestly quite revolutionary, especially when it comes to children's media. There's this idea that your bad emotions need to be locked up. That you're a horrible person if you ever feel angry or frustrated. Especially if you're assigned female at birth. It's not elegant and ladylike to feel anger, to speak out against people, to show dissatisfaction. But things like rage, frustration, and pain are completely normal emotions we all feel despite our sex at birth, obviously. They aren't good or bad, they just are. And repressing them won't help at all. Honestly, it will just make things worse. Instead, we need to be taught how to actually deal with them. You're allowed and honestly encouraged to show your anger, your pain and dissatisfaction. But if you do so by hurting others, yourself, or breaking property, that's when it's not okay. That's what makes it problematic, not the emotion itself. As long as you don't hurt anyone, including yourself in the process, it's honestly important to express these feelings. They are usually there to let you know that you're being mistreated, and you really shouldn't stifle and ignore that voice that's trying to protect you. It's extremely cathartic to see a feminine presenting character being so expressive. It's such a rare thing to see, and a breath of fresh air, honestly. And I'm not even the only person who thinks so. When Andy's friends showed the movie to their niece, this is what the little girl said. Her feedback was, I like Nimona because she's mean. I always remembered that because it's a 5-year-old's review. But there's something very true in that. We don't feel like we can express those dark, messy emotions. Nimona does things that we are not able to do, but she's a catharsis. Nimona was always hurting. She's just finally letting it out. But just like in our own world, people of the realm don't like it when someone expresses their anger at being mistreated for so long.
Everyone stay calm.
Considering everything these people did to her over the centuries, she's acting completely appropriately in this moment. She just wanted to live her life, play with her best friend, and that's literally it. As she stumbles towards the statue of said friend, the biggest symbol of her oppression and pain, they hurt their own people trying to attack her. Almost all the damage done to the city is from them trying to hurt her while she wails in agony. They are their own worst enemy, not Nimona. The director decides to point the cannon directly at the city.
Firing them will take out half the city. Innocent people will die.
And so will the monster.
She's willing to kill her own people just to take Nimona out. Because let's be honest, this was never about protecting the people. It was about keeping the status quo and her power. This fucking shot. Ballister watching the fruit of their labor. Him, Ambrosius, the director, the institution, the way he was raised, the culture he comes from. He's seeing the repercussions of his words. How it's more than just hurtful, it's literally deadly. As Nimona moves to impale herself on the sword of her former friend, someone who betrayed her just like Ballister did. This is the real, tangible result of your hate. People die. They get hurt. This is what you do. And it's so much more than just being hurt. Okay, so when I was researching for this video, I came across an article on a Christian review website, and I have some thoughts to share with the class about this review. Everyone say hi to Todd. Todd is a reviewer of media and one of the founders of didnt.com, a website that describes its purpose as, through our reviews, articles, and discussions, we hope to spark intellectual thought, spiritual growth, and a desire to follow the command of Colossians 2:8. I hope I said that right. See to it that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy, which depends on human tradition and the basic principle of this world rather than on Christ. So Todd has some questionable things to say about Nimona, but before I address those, I do not condone harassment. Do not attack him. Do not reach out to him. Do not engage with him. Do not send him hate. Honestly, don't pay him any attention because he genuinely doesn't deserve your time at all. Instead, just like PayPal a queer or trans friend of yours like $5 or send them a really nice message about how you love them. And if you really need to say something mean about him, just say it in the comments. Don't message it to him. Let's just all ignore Todd into oblivion, okay? Okay. Now let's see what Todd has to say about Nimona, shall we? Nimona doesn't just have a story to tell, it has an axe to grind and an agenda to push. It makes a valid point in that we should not treat anyone, no matter how much we might disagree with them, as monsters. But in the words of Nimona, We should question everything. And that means holding everything up to an objective standard, which can ultimately only be found through biblical scrutiny. And when stories run so counter to what we know to be true, especially stories designed for our children, we should kindly turn off the screen and gently show them the door. Aside from the question everything through Christ, which means questioning Christ is off the table, defeating the meaning of question everything, mental gymnastics that he just did, we can clearly see here that Todd was not a fan of nimona, and again implies the grooming narrative that people have been using against trans people lately. That all aside, however, Todd also implies another common conservative talking point here, which is that kids are too young to know about LGBT folks. Notice how they're too young when it's about queer people and straight kissing is fine and dandy. It makes you wonder if they see queer people as inherently sexual or something. Let me tell you, as someone who used to work with kids, mainly 5 to 14, they are genuinely much smarter than we give them credit for. They are curious and understanding, and as long as you phrase a subject in a way that they can wrap their heads around, they actually would love to know. And in my opinion, they deserve to know as well. Nate himself has talked about this too, actually. I think kids are interested in the world beyond maybe what they're supposed to see. And if you can do that in a responsible way that gives them a safe place to explore those things, I think it can be really profound. Things like death and fear and divorce and the terror of just being alive are things that kids do think about and are affected by. I think they need their own media that doesn't shy away from that stuff, but that also takes into account their viewpoint. Back to our dear friend Todd here. As you can see on the screen right now, in most parts of his review, Todd is very adamant on letting you know that Nimona is the worst, that she bit someone at some point, that Nimona frequently takes joy in the idea of tormenting, hurting, and killing others, equating it to psychopathic tendencies that merit some sort of diagnosis, and transferred into a gargantuan shadowy beast in another. He of course ignores that that's literally most cartoon characters. Because cartoons are usually exaggerated, that's where we get the adjective cartoonish. It's also curious to note that the same things are not criticized in AMAP characters like Ambrosius or Ballister, or when the institution do them. Speaking of the institution, Todd would like you to know that Glorith and the institution are an allegory for the church based on Indy's past. He also would like you to know how sexual this gay kiss is. Something I unfortunately saw in a lot of reviews, especially Christian reviews. It makes you wonder if they see queer people as inherently sexual or something. So that all being said, one might say that Todd does a great job noting every detail of this movie, that this is a thorough review that points out everything to its core. And yet, when it comes to the suicide scene, the scene we are currently talking about in the timeline, Todd specifically refuses to mention who it's happening to twice. He mentions this scene in 2 separate parts of this review and deliberately doesn't mention that it's Nimona attempting to kill herself both times. I mean, leaving it out even once would be strange for such a keen-eyed man such as Todd, who pays attention to details and knew that he wanted to be a writer when he won a writing contest in 4th grade because he was the only one to submit a piece. And yet, he lives it out twice. This isn't a mistake. This is intentional. When he talks about the hate Ballister and Nimona faced, he minimizes it. He talks about how they physically attack her, how it was sort of mean of them to do so, but makes sure not to mention anything about the emotional toll this takes on Nimona and to an extent on Ballister. When that was the central part of the story, it's literally the reason why the climax is happening at all. And even when he's talking about the physical aspect of the hate, he minimizes it. This becomes even more clear when you compare the wording to how he describes Nimona's crimes, quote unquote. He talks about the physical harm done to her as if Nimona was shoved in the DMV line and not hunted down by a literal army formed to end her existence for 1,000 years. This of course isn't surprising, is it? It's scummy and disgusting, but not surprising. If Todd acknowledges that the trans character he spent a great deal of this article demonizing is the victim of said suicide attempt, then it kind of paints him in a bad light, doesn't it? It kind of makes him sound like one of the characters who hated her in the movie. Then he would also have to acknowledge the psychological pain that comes from being hated and your mere existence questioned constantly. Something that he did his best to try to avoid. To intentionally refuse to mention who it is that tries to hurt themselves when you have made sure to mention Nimona by name in every other scene you didn't like, just so you don't have to acknowledge the magnitude of pain she's in. It's quite frankly shameful and disgustingly manipulative. It's the definition of omitting information to paint a specific narrative. If you see the existence of gender fluid characters as political, that says a lot about how you see the world and anyone who's different from you, Todd. I'm not a bad person for being alive and wanting to live in peace, Todd. Me, Nimona, and my trans friends, we are not monsters for existing. People like you who are willing to let 1 in every 2 kids contemplate to kill themselves and 17% to go through with it just because they counter what we know to be true are the monsters. As if you and your God can dictate other people's lives only to turn around and downplay all of it just to make yourself sound self-righteous. People like you and like many people where I come from who are willing to stop healthcare, the safety nets of literal children, to let them die or in the best case scenario live a depression-filled life as they try to repress their true selves, who are willing to rip away their supportive parents in the name of child abuse just because they don't fit the description of what you deem to be okay, are a fucking disgrace. Not me and my people. More legislation has been filed to restrict the lives of trans people so far in 2022 than at any other point in the nation's history, with trans youth being the most frequent target of lawmakers. Earlier this year, Texas Governor Greg Abbott issued a directive requiring child welfare agents to investigate gender-affirming medical procedures as child abuse, an order that could strip trans children away from their families. Following Abbott's child abuse directive, there is no guarantee of safety in many regards, said Anna, the mom of a trans preteen daughter in Houston. We could be physically unsafe, we could be medically unsafe because we can't access care, or we can be psychologically unsafe because we're mistreated. Anna's family hired a lawyer and carry a little card with his name everywhere they go. Anna feels at the mercy of everyone her family encounters. Threats are everywhere. Could her daughter's dentist report her? Her teachers? What if they're traveling and her daughter has an accident that requires medical attention? Could she trust those doctors? They're set to move to a state on the East Coast next year in hopes of escaping some of their fears. We were doing risk calculations every day and it was just getting too tiring, said Anna. So we decided to move. I relate to that. That's what I had to do too. These measures have put the trans community on edge, said Elisa McKenzie, an Orlando-based trans advocate. I don't know how to describe to somebody that isn't going through it how it feels to have the anxiety of waking up every morning not knowing whether your state is going to attack your right to exist. The number of anti-trans bills rose again in 2022, with 155 such bills introduced by October 13th. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I know that most people watching this far know exactly just how harmful and torturous this all is. But I need to make it as clear as I can for people like Todd, who seem to be too busy to do their own damn research. Well, I did it for you, Todd. I did your homework. You're welcome. Let's take South Dakota as an example. In 2022, the Trevor Project found out that 53% of LGBT youth, anyone who is between 13 to 24 and identifies as queer or questioning, have seriously considered suicide, and 19% have attempted suicide. LGBTQ plus young people are more than 4 times as likely to attempt suicide than their non-queer peers. However, these people are not inherently prone to suicide risk because of their sexual orientation or gender identity, but rather placed at higher risk because of how they are mistreated and stigmatized in society. The Trevor Project estimates that more than 1.8 million LGBTQ plus young people seriously consider suicide each year in the United States, and at least one attempt suicide every 45 seconds. When you look at the data, you can see exactly why the numbers are so high. 18% of queer youth in South Dakota have experienced discrimination because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. Do you understand how shamefully high that number is? That is 4 in 5 queer kids being discriminated against. Do you understand the magnitude, Todd? 40% of these kids were physically threatened or attacked because of being queer. 40%. That is less than 80%, yes, but that number should be 0. This shouldn't be happening. These kids aren't hurting anyone. They just want to live their lives. This is not okay, and it needs to change. And people like you are the reason why it's not. Todd. Susan Williams, the founder of the Transformation Project, a trans youth advocacy group in South Dakota, said she was not surprised to see the alarming numbers in her state, including that only 4% of LGBTQ plus youth said their communities were very accepting. The lack of affirming adults in these individuals' lives is absolutely one of the reasons that these mental health statistics are so off the charts in South Dakota. She said her son, who is 16 years old and trans, removes all social media apps from his phone and tries to avoid the news entirely during state legislative cycles. She noted it's so incredibly hard for him to see queer identities being debated by our state. He says, I can't handle this attack on who I am as a person. She also gets more calls about bullying when lawmakers are pushing anti-trans policies. Williams said that she hoped the legislators would see this data and recognize that the anti-trans political movement is directly hurting people. People are just trying to live their lives and go to school and have a family and get involved in sports, to have fun with their friends, or just get healthcare they need to survive. You and your evangelical buddies are willing to ignore the astronomically high depression and anxiety rates, the death and the suicide attempts, and the suffering of literal children. You help to make it worse by restricting and banning books, healthcare, education, and even movies for queer kids and for non-queer kids, so they can also be accepting of themselves and others. You restrict anything and everything, and you seriously believe you're doing the right thing? That you're a good person worthy of heaven? Do you really believe that, Todd? Research suggests that among LGBTQ plus young people, only 1/3 experience parental acceptance, with an additional 1/3 experiencing parental rejection, and the final 1/3 not disclosing their LGBTQ plus identity until they are adults. Another study found that LGBT young adults who report high levels of parental rejections are 8 times more likely to report attempting suicide and 6 times more likely to report high levels of depression. Fuck you, Todd. Sincerely. Fuck you. Okay, I'm calmer now. Let's finish the movie.
I'm sorry. I see you, Nimona. And you're not alone.
Fucking hell. I'm not gonna cry on camera. I'm not gonna cry on camera. I'm not gonna cry on camera. Okay. You know, I don't think people realize just how much power one individual person has. Just one person seeing you for who you really are helps with the painful ache in your heart, the cruel voices in your head that tell you all these people who hate you are right and that you're better off dead. Just one person supporting you and being there for you can literally save your life. I've been telling you about some pretty sad statistics, so let me tell you about some nice ones for a change. LGBTQ young people who had accepting adults in their lives reported significantly lower odds of attempting suicide compared to those who did not. LGBTQ young people who reported sharing their sexual orientation with at least one of the 4 categories of adults, including a caretaker, another family member, a teacher or school staff, or a healthcare professional, and felt accepted by at least one of these adults, had 24% lower odds of reporting a suicide attempt in 2023 compared to LGBTQ young people who were out to at least one adult but did not feel accepted. Similarly, transgender or non-binary youth who reported sharing their gender identity and being accepted by at least one of the 4 adults examined had 30% lower odds of reporting a suicide attempt in the past year. Let's look at this chart. The rates of attempted suicide significantly decreases from 25% to 16% when the transgender people are accepted by just one parent or caregiver. That is almost a 10% decrease, and it shows just how important and life-changing one compassionate adult can be in the lives of queer people. Something as simple as using someone's chosen name or correct pronouns can literally save their life. Transgender and non-binary young people who reported that all of the people they live with respect their pronouns reported lower rates of attempting suicide. You, yes, you, watching this video right now. You can make a difference by supporting the trans and queer people in your life and showing them that you're a safe person to be around, by being there for them and using their chosen name and pronouns, by standing up for them and letting them know that they are not alone. You can change someone's life. I sound like a cult leader right now. You can stop someone from dying. You have more power than you realize, and if you choose to give love to the ones that need it the most, you'll make a bigger change than you can imagine. When Ballister says,
I see you, Nimona.
He means that he sees her pain, but also her happiness, the different facets of her personality. And nothing makes that more clear than the fact that he uses her name. He calls her Nimona for the very first time in the movie. He finally uses her chosen name, which is the only thing she asked for this whole time. I mean it. In no point he actually calls her by her name. So for him to finally use her chosen name, he's showing that he is actually seeing her. And fuck if that's not all queer people want at the end of the day. That and healthcare, that would be nice too. For me, I never got that support from an adult in my life when I was a kid. I was never seen outside the tiny group of my online friends. So when I tell you how fucking happy I am that this movie exists, you cannot truly understand how much I mean it. I want queer generations after mine to be happier. I want trans kids to have heaps of support from the adults and kids in their lives. I want trans tweens to know that they are seen and loved for who they are. And I want cishet kids to learn that prejudice is not the way to go, even if that's what the older generation teaches you. I'm so freaking grateful for this movie. And trust me, I know we have a long way to go, but this is a step in the right direction. I just want the trans kids watching this movie to know that they'll be okay, that we'll be okay, that we'll make it through this and we'll win at the end.
Your feelings don't make you a bad person. That having big feelings and big emotions and anger and fear and pain, those things don't mean you're broken. They don't mean that, you're a danger to other people. You can feel those things and you can believe in yourself and you can ask for help and you can receive help and you deserve to receive help. I just hope that people see that in her, in all the ways that she's messy and all the ways that she's rough around the edges. I think that she's a character that was really healing to me, and I hope that she can be that for many other people, old and young, all over the world.
The director, however, doesn't agree, obviously, and tries to kill half the city just to take Nimona out. And as disappointing as that is, I'm sort of glad that they didn't show her suddenly changing her mind out of nowhere. It's a shitty realization I came to just before I left Iran, but some people never change. No matter what, my mother is always going to be a bigot. I know parents in Western countries that refuse to even acknowledge queer people's existence because they see us as bad influence on their kids. Some people are stupid and ignorant. They carry old ideologies and they refuse to listen to anyone else or grow as a person. And that fucking sucks. But it's not hopeless. We can and we will triumph despite these people. They can keep being stuck in their old ways of thinking as we build a better future for their kids. We will be fine, and we will prove to people like my mom and the director just how pathetic their hatred truly is. Nimona does just that here.
Be right back. I'm gonna go break some stuff.
It's time to rewrite this story.
Nimona! Nimona!
Go back to the shadows from whence you came.
Just being seen by one person gave her the energy to help all these people who have been nothing but cruel to her. The production designer, Aiden Sogano, again, I do hope I'm pronouncing that right, put it really well when he said, in Nimona's moment of deepest pain and isolation, when she feels like there is no hope, she becomes an actual creature of shadow. She becomes a creature whose very essence consumes light until she's finally seen, and then she becomes light. She becomes acceptance. She becomes a literal sun that turns night into day. Also, the evil bitch is dead. Let's go. I felt like strangling her every time she was on screen, so I'm glad she's gone. Look at this gay kiss. Look at it. Bask in the glory of it. And let us all say collective fuck you to Disney for canceling the movie, for including this moment. Allegedly. It's all alleged. Don't sue me, Disney. Also, Nimona's fine. She's not dead. This isn't supernatural. We're not gonna kill off our main character the second she finds some happiness. Before I let you go, I want to talk to you about the different endings this story has had, or almost had. In the webcomics, Nimona's dark side is killed off by Ballister. And originally, I believe it was supposed to end there, with Nimona being slain and dead forever. Thank God it didn't, holy shit. Andy has talked about how the ending of the story changed because, well, mainly because apparently his sister threatened to never speak to him again if he didn't change it. But also because as he started releasing the webcomic on Tumblr, more people started loving Nimona and relating to her, both the good in her and the ugly. As we saw before, Niv has been quite open about how Nimona was the manifestation of his anger and confusion at 19 when he had just left the church and I believe also Christianity, and he was trying to untangle his beliefs from the ones of the religion and trying to find out who he is. For Stevenson, Nimona is a power fantasy, but one who is equally wounded and scared, desperate to be seen, held and loved. She's a character with a lot of pain and anger at her heart, and that's why she exists, he says. When I made her, I was doing it for my own catharsis. At the time, I had just left the church, and so leaving the church for me was not just leaving Christianity as a faith, although I did that as well. It was also leaving behind the evangelical, conservative upbringing that I had been raised with. My feelings were too big for anyone else to bear, so I withdrew inside myself. I was more alone than ever, without even Jesus in my mind for company. But like I said, as the comic grew, more and more people started to relate to Nimona's struggles, and more people started showing her love and sympathy as well. They saw that Nimona was hurting and didn't demonize her for it, even though Andy was demonizing himself as he was going through a similar pain. People indirectly and somewhat accidentally started to give Nate the love and understanding that he couldn't give to himself yet, compelling him to change the ending of the webcomic. He wrote on his Substack, looking back, "I've talked before about the original ending being much darker. There's a question at the heart of the story. Is Nimona really a monster or not? And honestly, I would have had a very different answer for you at the beginning. Those were the fears I had about myself at the time. That's the story I set out to tell, even back when it was a silly gag strip about a shark with boobs. But in the process of serializing that story as a webcomic, those feelings started to shift. Because when other people are reading every week and seeing themselves in Nimona and loving her and rooting for her, the ruthless self-evisceration gets harder. It was easy being cruel to myself, but I couldn't do that to them. I joked that I changed the ending because my sister threatened to never speak to me again if I didn't. And that's true, but mostly I did it because she was right, and because I had finally come to a place where I could actually believe that she was right. Because the act of making the comic itself had given me the thing I feared I could never have: community and acceptance and being seen. Contrast the dark and gloomy ending we almost got, and the better comic book ending, better as in Nimona survives at the very least, with the hopeful one of the movie. In the latter version, not only does she survive and come back, she's also met with compassion when she turns into the shadowy monster and shows her pain and anger. She doesn't need to be fixed anymore. She doesn't need anyone to destroy the bad parts of her to be loved. She needs to be loved as a whole person with her flaws, and she receives just that from Ballister and from the town people after that.
The other major thing that we felt really strongly about was in the graphic novel, Nimona and the shadow creature split to become separate entities connected. And we felt it was super important to, in this adaptation, to keep that singular. That idea that you can have rough edges, you can have this pain, you can lash out, you can sometimes show a side of yourself that is scary or ugly or not what people want to see, but that's okay. Like all of that messiness makes us the whole individual that we are. And, we wanted to make sure that we kept that Nimona, is never apologetic about it, and neither should we. There's times when we're great, and there's sometimes we're not at our best, but that's okay. That's okay.
This ending is evidently much more hopeful, and I believe that this positivity parallels very well with Nate's own journey of self-acceptance. He went from a 19-year-old who wasn't out as sapphic or transgender, who was a decade away from figuring out and accepting his identity, to a very accomplished showrunner with people willing to back up his work even when Disney wouldn't. The story of making Nimona against all odds and the story of its creator perfectly encapsulates the story of the movie itself, and more specifically why this more hopeful ending is absolutely warranted. Yes, there are a lot of obnoxiously loud people out there trying to take away our rights and healthcare, but there's also an even bigger population of people out there willing to fight for us more than ever before. People who let their trans kids be who they really are and make sure that they are safe. Middle schoolers who get to transition without going through the traumatizing ordeal of going through a puberty that doesn't align with your gender identity. More and more people have been accepting, and even Disney has had to budge a little bit. They still suck, but it's a step in the right direction. I'm not at the end of my journey. I'm not where Andy Stevenson is right now, even though I don't think he would also say he's at the end of his journey yet. I don't have a stable house or job. The usual queer people problems, really. But I know that I will be okay because of good-natured people like the ones that made this movie. It helps me keep going. Nimona was accepted at the end because it has actually happened to many, 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 many trans people out there. To Andy, to me, to a lot of my friends, and it will happen to you too, if it hasn't already. I promise, just hold on to that hope and you will be okay. I also want to thank my Ko-Fi supporters, John, Leonardo, Azura, and Glitter. Thank you for helping me pay my rent, literally. And if you want to help me too, please subscribe, that would help a lot. And also consider helping me on Ko-Fi or Patreon. And if you want more of my writing, you can subscribe to my Substack. I write a lot about queer problems and also childhood PTSD. Also, the Substack is free. The subscription there doesn't cost anything. It was a really emotional video to make. And it took me around like 5 months to finish it. Mostly because I don't have enough money to afford my ADHD medication and Red Bull just makes me sleepy. But it was also because it's really hard to go through pages and pages of people arguing why you shouldn't exist. Couple that with my intersectionality and it's a messy image, honestly. Like, I look at Middle Easterner charts and like, oh wow, look, the statistics are so high. Oh, and the same is for non-binary people and pansexual people. Oh, I love it here. This is so good for my mental health right now. That being said, it was also quite therapeutic to talk about these things and share them with anyone who needs to hear it. I cried a lot during the research and scripting for this video. I came across a lot that I couldn't really include in this video because it wasn't just as relevant or it would take up too much time. For example, reading the comic book Andy Stevenson made about his chest dysphoria and getting top surgery just made me bawl my eyes out. Like, this panel just made me cry for a good 30 minutes, I think, because I really want top surgery, and just seeing the raw emotions of how happy it made him, I just really want that, and it was nice to see someone else have it. Oh my god, I'm getting teary-eyed. Stop it. Stop. Stop. Okay, the comic book about the top surgeries is called The Weight of Them, and I'm going to link it in the document along with the sources of this video. I'm also going to link a bunch of things that I think are cool in the documents in case you want to check them out. I really want to make more videos. It's really good for my soul to create and write things and make things, edit. I enjoy it a lot. Thank you for watching this video if you made it this far. And please let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. Also, go watch Nimona. And if you have already watched it, go watch it again. I recommend it to other people and give it double thumbs up so we can see more queer people on the screen, okay? Okay, I love you. Bye.
In very many ways, the story of Nimona became the story of the making of Nimona. And there were lots of people who were supportive of that, and there were some people who were nervous of that. And you were either on the side of the punks or the side of the Institute, and some people chose one side, some people chose the other. I think you know where that line kind of lands. That's the nicest way I'll say it today. Yeah, I didn't bring up Disney at all. But I do gotta say something, because over the past couple days, I've given Disney a lot of flack. And to be specific, there are so many, and I'm stealing this from Karen, because Karen always says this really well. We have so many friends and family at Disney. We really do. People who are trying to do the same thing, trying to tell the same stories. At the end of the day, there's a couple chuckle fucks up at the top who are standing in the way of that, right? And I hope this movie shows that we can have a great fucking time. Sorry, kids, I said fuck, chuckle fuck, shit. I was told not to.